This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here are the BCSN SportsWrap, Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, the pregame show, the Carlos Brown Show, the ONG Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
Maureen is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon, so now she's free to become Maureen the Merrier. Food is her love language, and she really loves her grandson. Like, really loves.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Mobile banking from Truist actually works for you. It gives you simple, smart, personalized insights to keep you one step ahead. Because we think that's the kind of control you deserve over your money. When you start with care, you get a different kind of bank. Truist. Download the mobile app now.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
That's a pretty tight spot.
Watch this.
Still, I'm hearing the buzzing though. Oh, we are. I don't see the screen. Okay, that's why I'm wondering if we're live. All right. Okay, we are live. We're doing it. Are we doing it live? Are we live? I don't hear you. You got to put me in there. You got to somehow get it figured out so I can see what's going on. I love these. I love these awkward starts where I can't see you. You can't see what's going on. I can't hear you though, Drew. All right, everybody on YouTube's like, yeah, you're live, and Drew's mouthing to me that you're live, and I'm like, no, we can't be live, but yes, now we're live. So hey, welcome to take two of the BCSN Sports Wrap. I'm Brian Fulford. That's AD Drew doing double duty tonight. So I promise to be gentle with Drew today and not be so impatient, but. I'm excited about another weekend of football. I'm a big win. My teams are winning, Drew. So I'm a little excited. So I'm a little excited. I got a couple W's under my belt, and so it's a good feeling. How you doing tonight, rather?
Doing fine, my brother. Went 2-0 with my alma maters on this past weekend. So anytime you get 2-0s, we are happy. Although they scared the living Jesus out of me, both teams, Florida A&M and Tuskegee. But, I'm happy. And then some of the other teams that I root for. Matter of fact, every team that I kind of have a place in my heart for them because they're geographically close to me or I've done some contract work with them, they all won except for one. That would be Edward Waters was the only one that lost yesterday. Albany State won, Fort Valley won, Miles won, Benedict won. So, feeling kind of good. Wish I would have took that to Vegas though.
I'm telling you, man, because I'm still a little sore. I'm looking at the standings in our picks contest. I'm a little sore about the fact that that Alabama State game ended the way it did.
Needed a field goal. I needed a field goal by anybody.
That cost me not only in my pocket, but it also cost me in the standings where I sit at 3-2 at the bottom of the pile, while you, BJ, Jamie, Kelvin, you guys all went unbeaten again. I don't know. I got to go back and look and see who you guys are picking. I may have to put some.
I'm gonna tell you something. I looked at it. We all went 4-0 instead of 5-0 this week because we all picked the Central VUL game, and that game came off.
I shouldn't have put that game in there. Yeah, I shouldn't have put that. I don't know why I put that game in there. I don't know what I was thinking. I shouldn't have included that game, knowing that everybody and their mama was going to pick.
That was low hanging fruit.
Central.
Low hanging fruit, right there.
That was the game that that you didn't even have to think about picking to win, and so yeah, I should have left that out and been a little more challenging. You were on the right side of that Alcorn contest. I was on the wrong side, of course, of the Bama State contest, and on the wrong side of the A&T, South Carolina State. But we'll talk about that.
Stayed away from that one.
Yeah. I thought you see. This is why when we have these shows here, like tonight, at the end, we have to come to some consensus on which games we're going to pick. Or what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put 5. That way I'm going to limit everybody's choices. And then that way you have to pick somebody. But I think I'm going to start to make this.
That sounds like the salty loser trying to change the rules mid-game.
Yes, yes, it does.
Free throws worth 2 points for my team. It's only worth 1 point for your team.
It's called executive privileges of the commissioner. You go look up. Roger Goodell even has some kind of, what does he have, a commissioner's list or some sort of commissioner's exempt list where he just randomly puts guys who might be in trouble in the league on a list. Well, I'm going to pull commissioner executive privilege, and I'm going to reduce the number of games and force everybody to pick games a little closer to each other.
Maybe like 7 games, so we have some overlap or something. Got to give us.
That's probably what I'll do. I won't put as many, especially when we're not dealing with conference games, because you guys don't have any faith in the HBCUs winning these non-conference games against the PWIs, and so I'm the probably only sucker that keeps picking these guys, and then they end up losing, and so that's where half my losses have come. Me believing, I believe. Yeah, I'm believing in the wrong teams is what's happening out here. So yeah, hey, loaded show tonight. Anybody who's out there already tuned in, watching us there on YouTube and on Facebook, please make sure to go ahead and like the feed, like the stream. If you're not already subscribed to us on YouTube, please go ahead and do that. And as always, please go follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at MyBCSN1, the number one. If you have not already downloaded the Jericho Broadcast Networks app, you can do that by just going to the Google and Apple Play Store and then type in MyJBN, MyBCSN. And all of our shows on the Black College Sports Network can be found in podcast form on the BCSN Pod Zone. So if you're one of those podcast listeners, like I was, as I was driving from Orlando up to Tallahassee, and I'm sure you were, as you were going from your home in southern Georgia out to Columbia or somewhere, Columbia, South Carolina. Yeah, I'm sure you were listening to podcasts and stuff like that. So there's multiple ways in which you can pick up all of our shows. And even if you happen to miss this morning's Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, the morning recap, that is now available on the BCSN Pod Zone, as well as the video stream as well. So shout out, I saw Chuck Hunt already checking in. Let's see who's the first in. Khalifi. I'm gonna mess the name up here. Kalfani, first one in. I know I'm gonna mess that name up, so my apologies there. But Mary 305 also jumped in there, and appreciate you guys. I see David Garner, a few other folks as well jumping in. So hey, today's show we're gonna recap not only what happened in the Division I level, but the non-D1 level. We're going to also get into talking about some grades. We got to grade the top 10 from the HBCU Pro Sports Media Association top poll. Then the debut of the BCSN top 5. Much anticipated, much debated as the season goes along. But Drew, I want to start with letting people know how our poll differs from other polls, because obviously, it seems like as we've done this, the number of polls have tripled. And so now there are all kinds of polls. People who weren't doing polls are doing polls now. And hey, that's all great. But I think we got to make a distinction here between computer rankings, individual rankings, and polls. Okay. We at the BCSN do a computer ranking. So Drew is the master, is the professor. Yeah, the professor behind the formulation of our polls. And Drew, give people a little, don't give them too much, but give them a little bit of what goes into the pot that creates the BCSN top 5 rankings.
It's an algorithm that we have put together over the last few years, and we make slight adjustments to it every year to correct certain imperfections that we see in the algorithm every year. But in general, it is an algorithm that assigns value to wins and losses. Now, those wins and losses are broken down into conference wins and losses versus non-conference wins and losses against fellow HBCUs, such as this week we had South Carolina State and North Carolina A&T. There's a value assigned to that. In addition to your overall non-conference record, obviously, just like with most computer rankings, you get bonus points for road victories or neutral site victories, because going into hostile territory should be valued. Then it takes in a couple of other metrics that we've come up with, and the most important metric that it takes into consideration is strength of schedule. We calculate strength of schedule of the opponents. So just so you know, everyone's 4-0 is not the same. So it looks good on paper, but everyone's 4-0 is not the same. And I'll give you an example. Let's take a 2-2 Delaware State.
Yeah.
Delaware State is 2-2. Who were their two wins against? Their two wins were against Division II Lincoln, who is having a, a great year for them, but that's an FCS playing in Division II. They're supposed to win that game, and they're supposed to dominate that game. And then their other victory was against VUL, who does not play a home game and is classified as NCCAA. They're not NCAA. They're not NAIA. They are a third classification that is considered below NAIA. So the value of those two victories are not the same as the value of a Florida A&M who has a FCS victory and a Division II victory, and are is not the same. Give me another 2-2 team out here with two FCS.
Another 2-2.
Alcorn
How
State.
about
Alcorn State.
okay?
Alcorn State,
Yep.
who has two FCS victories, and one of
Yeah,
those
so-
FCS victories is in conference.
Right. So coming up a little bit later in the second hour, we'll reveal the top five. Won't be having looked at it, there won't be too much controversy. I think the top five are the top five, and someone might say, why top five? You know, we looked at this back in the day, Drew, and really when you see these top 10, I'm juxtaposing this against the number of teams at the HBCU level, right? So, you know, you can't compare the top 10 in the HBCU landscape versus the top 10, say, in the FBS, where you have 25 to 30 teams. 100, excuse me.
You got
100-something teams.
131 teams in FCS, 132 teams in FBS. They differ by one.
Right. So on those levels,
67 teams, Division II.
Yeah, so on those levels, when you're looking at the top 10, it kind of stands out. Like, hey, top 10, that's pretty impressive. But at the BCS, at the HBCU level, we've got 21 teams, right? So, I mean, half the leagues that are eligible are in the top 10, right? So,
It's like the NBA playoffs. You got 30 teams in the NBA, 16 make the playoffs. Well, now
make the playoffs, exactly.
Now it's up to 20 teams make the playoffs of the play-in.
Yeah, so, you know, what we did in saying top five, we're looking at the upper quarter. So the upper quarter, the sort of top tier teams, and that's sort of what our top five looks at. So that's what we chose to focus on and just try to be a little bit different. And I think it's a little more focused, a little more interesting to talk about the top five than to talk about teams 6 through 10. That could fluctuate, and it will fluctuate all season long. As it is. But I'll say it's fun being a voter in a poll. It is fun. I don't want to discredit polls with voters because the good thing about that, Drew, is you do have a variety of people. You got people, different states that cover, you know, that have more intimate details about some teams versus others, have different thoughts and perspectives on how you rate and evaluate wins and losses. So when you have a poll like that, when you have a poll with a group of voters of a nice variety in size, it does make it kind of interesting looking and seeing what the aggregate of people's choices come up with.
Yeah, here's the thing, Brian. Some of these polls out here, y'all need to buyer beware on some of these polls are committees of less than 5. We'll just put it to you like that. I'm sorry, but a poll of less than 5 is not a poll. It's an opinion. Nothing wrong with that person expressing their opinion, but you cannot call it a poll when you've got 3, 4, 5 people deciding who's the number one team, and people looking at that and say, hey, that's the national champion because that one person or that 3-person committee decided, hey, that's the best team that's out here. You know, you need Minimum, you got to have double digits. You need to have multiple people, multiple areas. You can't have all your posters live in Atlanta. You gotta have a bias. You can't have all your posters live in Houston. You gotta have a bias because of that. You need to look at some of these polls and the variety of people, where they're located, what schools they cover. And it's just like coaches polls. Co- Coaches polls are most of the time filled out by an SID, because the only thing that the coach know is who we just played and who we play next week. That's the only thing that the coach can tell you when they go and vote. So that's why both sides of the SIDs fill those polls out.
I'll bite back just a little on that and say if when you talk about buyer beware, look, there are a lot of people who are committing a lot of time to watching. So if you do, and you know how you find that out as you pay attention to their Twitter feed, you read their stories, you read their video or watch their video content, you will get a sense as to how much time somebody is putting into the content and knowing the teams, the players, the coaches, the matchups, going into the numbers. And you know what? If someone is going deep diving and they're breaking down and giving a ranking, and there's really only them and maybe one other person, you know what? That's their business. That's what they do.
That's a ranking. That's a ranking.
Well, but I don't know too many. Well, okay, so all right, I see what you're saying. That's a ranking. You're talking about poll. I don't know if
poll is like.
Yeah, I just don't know too many other polls. But yeah, okay. So I get it like this. You can see the difference in the polls based on the number of first place votes and things like that. So again, it's all good commentary. That's what polls are designed to do. And in the end, when you can truly decide it on the field of play, that's what matters. And, unfortunately, despite what we're told and sold in HBCU land, there is rarely a on the field prove it game between the best two. Maybe two of the best three, or maybe two of the best four, but rarely is it the best versus the best. 1 versus 2, undisputed. Now, every now and then we do get that. Okay, don't get me wrong, where everybody can agree. Oh yeah, those are the two best teams.
I think A&T Alcorn, what was that, 2 years ago, pre-pandemic?
A couple years ago, yeah.
That might have been the top two teams when that was I want to say that was the 12-0 team from A&T. I really think those were the top two teams in the nation at that point in time to kind of count you.
And I think there was even a year where you had A&T and Grambling. Grambling went undefeated, and was it Central?
No, that was Central.
Was it Central? Yeah. I think there was there was no arguments there that those two were the top two. So it happens. It happens. But all right, so that's coming up a little bit later. All right, Drew, let's get into quick recaps. Let's get into some recaps of some of the top games from let's start with the Division I side. And I want to start with, I put a poll out on YouTube late last week asking people's opinions, because there were 4 top 10 matchups. If you looked at the HBCU Pro Sports Media poll, there were 4 top 10 matchups coming into this week. You had Virginia Union versus Fayetteville State. You had Fort Valley versus Bluefield State. You had Prairie View versus Alabama State, and you had Alcorn versus UAPB. So I put a poll out there to say, hey, what's going to be game of the week? And folks gravitated towards Prairie View and Alabama State. Just off your opinion, what of those 4, would that be your game of the week or weekend?
Give me those 4 again.
So you had it was the 2 top 10s. The 2 top, the 4 top, the 2 top 10 matchups on both sides, the non and the D1.
Oh, okay. Non and D1. I still have to lean towards the Union Fayetteville State as the game of the week. Two top teams in their conference. Union predicted to finish second in the North. Fayetteville predicted to finish first in the South. I believe it was a 2 or 3 point game? I don't have the score in front of me right now.
3 point game.
Yeah.
3 point game.
And then you've got to think about Union with Bowie being down this year, having those losses early. Now Union is the king of the hill in the North. So now you've got the new king of the hill playing in the North, playing the old king of the hill, or the current king of the hill in the South. That you couldn't ask for a better matchup than that. Then you throw in the star power of a Jada Byers in this particular matchup. Yeah, that's the game of the week for me, and I'll have some more on that game as we get into it.
All right, so we will get into that, but let's start with the Prairie View traveling to Alabama State game. Prairie View's coming into the contest 1-2, but they're 1-0 in conference by virtue of their win against Texas Southern. Alabama State 2-1, coming off a bye, and they're at home. And I don't know, Drew, but coming into this one, I think there was two things. I think one, you had a lot of people talking about, could Trayvon Conley, was he a passer? Could he pass the ball? Would he be a better passer, better quarterback than D. Davis? You heard Dr. Cavill, if you listen this morning, to Texas quarterbacks who I believe, whether it be their schools, their high schools, or whether it be them themselves, whether I'm not quite sure whether they actually matched up on the field in high school, but he did mention their schools are in Texas two highly respected and championship caliber programs that those two guys came out of. So this contest, though, came down to, I'll tell you what, I felt like when I go and look at the box score, I felt like Connolly heard people's comments about whether he could pass the ball. He was 14 of 19, 180 yards, one touchdown, one INT. He ran for 25 yards, 2 touchdowns rushing. So basically he accounted for 3 scores and matched up against D. Davis, who drew his fumbles late in the fourth quarter. I mean, give credit to Prairie View's defense, but his 2 fumbles late. This is a ball game in which, Prairie View was only leading by 2 points. And on 2 different drives, D. Davis had a fumbled or had the ball forced out of his hands, and those turnovers prevented Alabama State from potentially taking the lead in that contest until Prairie View actually did take the lead and win that contest. So I got to go scoreboard for Conley and Prairie View. What's your takeaways and thoughts on that game?
If you are Coach Eddie Robinson Jr., you have pulled off the one thing that no coach ever wants to do. Lose, bye week, lose. Having lost to UCLA prior to the bye week, then coming out of the bye week, lose to conference foe Prairie View A&M. Now, I know there was a big question on whether D. Davis was even going to play in this particular game because he had been out for, I know, at least the UCLA game. Cannot remember if he was out the game prior to that. So, look, the one thing you can say about Alabama State is they got the defense figured out. I don't think there's a question about what they can do on their defense. The question is, can they figure out how to get it going on offense? You've got this star quarterback, 4-star recruit, transfer from Auburn down here in Montgomery. Great 2-way player. Got to figure out a way to utilize his skill set to improve the offense. That's what the biggest problem that I see with Alabama State. For Prairie View, hey, you've given away one, maybe 2 games this season that you should have won against non-HBCUs. So for you to take those lessons learned in those games and to right the ship into conference play, because let's be real, 2 losses in this conference will virtually eliminate you on either side. So for Prairie View A&M to be 2-0 after 2 conference games, that gives them the wiggle room and takes some of that pressure off of them. If we slip up, we still have a chance in this conference. Versus if you start off 0-2 in this conference, you might as well hang it up.
Yeah, in the what's interesting for Prairie View, in the 2 losses, they only managed 13 and 14 points. The 2 wins, 40 and 24. So it's that 3 touchdown threshold. Can you get the 3 touchdowns? Can you have enough offense? Because the defense is doing a pretty decent job. But can you get the 3 touchdowns? 3+ touchdowns? Because I think once you hit that 3 touchdown mark, your team is in it. And I think Prairie View, I heard BJ Jones talk about this, I believe, this morning. Prairie View is rolling into the State Fair Classic, potentially with an opportunity to, I think, make it practically impossible for Grambling to have a shot at winning the West. I mean, they could pretty much knock out. I mean, there was only maybe there's not only maybe a few people that expected Grambling to really contend this particular year, but a win by Prairie View. And they seem to have, I don't know the history, so don't catch me here. I could look it up real quick, but I feel like Prairie View has owned or won, maybe over the last 5 years, they've won probably 4 of these matchups, I feel like, if my recent memory, is correct. So that'll be interesting. And
Prairie View's won the last 4 in a row.
Yeah. So they've won the last 4 in a row, and then here comes.
And then Grambling won 4 in a row prior to that.
Yeah.
And then Prairie View won 3 in a row prior to that. So it's been a series of streaks.
Right, a series of streaks, and I'd be shocked if the streak came to an end for Prairie View next week in Dallas. And for Alabama State, look, they have to get back to winning. They had a good first 2 games of the season, and they're going to be. Look, they play Texas Southern. They travel to Houston to play Texas Southern. That is not going to be an easy game because, maybe Texas Southern lost last week. Or this past weekend to a UTSA team that was coming off of a loss to University of Texas, and they really competed well in that game against Texas. But Texas Southern put up. We'll talk about them maybe in a little bit, but they held their own. And so Alabama State, big contest coming up.
Yeah,
another SWAC.
Speaking of Alabama State, it's amazing how this conference can force you to do some things that don't make sense to the common man. And what I mean by that is start looking at some of these homecoming opponents that people have. And, there's been the question that we saw, if you saw it on the pregame show, where Deion gave the guys off this week because Jackson State goes to Alabama State for homecoming. So I had to why would you schedule Jackson State for homecoming? All right. Obviously, you had the game against Miles last week. I mean, earlier this month. Can't do that one. That was first game of the season. It's September, this Prairie View game. Don't want to have a homecoming in September. Right. Your next home game, obviously, you got the Jackson State home game. You do have Valley, who is a common homecoming opponent, except
should have been their homecoming.
Except the fact that that's going into a bye, and coming out of the bye, you have the Magic City Classic. So for fans and financial purposes, I don't know if you want to have those 2 events back to back like that.
So wait a minute. The schedule is
the next game.
So the schedule is what? They could have had Valley, then a bye, and then the Magic City Classic.
Right. They do have Valley at home before
and then a bye afterwards.
Bye, and then Magic City Classic. Not quite sure if you want to put your fans in that position.
Yes, you put them in that position. That you have the bye week. That is exactly what the bye week is for. You get a chance to recover after homecoming, and then the next week you get ready to take your butts to the Magic City Classic. Poor scheduling by Bama State. I mean, that's just my recommendation. That
Okay.
I
I
but
was trying. I was trying to help him out.
yeah, no, I'm sorry. I
Okay. Let's
poor
move on.
scheduling by then. Yeah, the other top 10 matchup was UAPB, Alcorn State, Arkansas, Pine Bluff had coming into this contest 2-1. We were all liking what we saw from Alcorn. I mean, of course, Alcorn, who finally got that win over McNeese, gave a game away against who was that? Stephen F. Austin. And so for some people, I didn't think this game was going to be close, Drew. But there is the fact that UAPB's season went 180 after they played Alcorn. What was it, last year? And so I think a lot of people were still waiting to see, is this the change? What is UAPB going to be? I mean, they had beaten up on some people, and what we found out that, and I love the way BJ said this. Alcorn, he said Alcorn's back. I predict. Look, that was my favorite to come out the West anyway, but Alcorn drops a 38-21 victory. Fourth quarter, they scored four touchdowns to close that game out after being down 21-10 in the third quarter. And once again, very similar. I don't know if it's not quite as dramatic as what happened last time these two teams met, but once again, UAPB blows a lead, and Alcorn ends up literally running to a 38-21 victory. And Drew, not quite the same numbers that Jada Byers of Virginia Union had against Valdosta State, but we might have seen the second best performance rushing, and that was by Jarvion Howard, who ran for 295 yards, 25 carries, 4 touchdowns. 3 of those came in the third and fourth quarter from 11-24, and then he kicked off a 78-yarder late in the fourth quarter. Drew, there's a lot of people talking about Alcorn is back. Were they ever gone for you? What's your take on Alcorn as they put up 386 as a team on the ground, 484 total on UAPB?
Alcorn was in the shop getting some maintenance. That's what they were last year. You know how you put your car in the shop for routine maintenance? That's what last year was for Alcorn. Just put your shop in for your 100,000 mile checkup or whatever it needs to be. I want to flip over here to UAPB. Remember, we started this show off talking about all 2-2 teams are not the same. UAPB falls into that category where they look good on paper, but they beat a Division II Lane who just picked up their first victory. A little bit disappointed. Lane was one of those teams expected to who people expect to contend in the SIAC West, but they just picked up their first victory of the season. And then they beat, who was it, like a Northwestern State, another one of those teams that have questionable classifications. So this is why we don't do top 10s at the BCSN. You call this a top 10 matchup, Brian? This was a top 10 matchup by default because when a lot of voters got down to number 9 and number 10, you had to put UAPB in there just because they had a 500 record. Because when you looked and you saw teams like North Carolina A&T, who probably has a better team on paper, but they are 0-3. You can't justify putting the 0-3 team in. Most people can't justify putting the 0-3 team in before a 2-2 team. So that's why we eliminated top 10. We went with top 5 so we don't give out the participation trophies around here. Let's move on to another game, man.
Look, hey, I do want to ask this for the guys, for the folks in the chat room. Who are you buying? Who are you buying? Are you buying UAP or not UAPB? Are you buying Alcorn or are you buying Prairie View? If you can only buy one, who are you buying? Because, I know a lot of people sold their Southern stock after last week, right? That was Southern was the preseason predicted winner of the West. Am I correct on that?
If you didn't sell it, it's on the market.
You're right. It's in the sell, the to be traded bin. Yeah. So I'm asking you guys out there, you tell me, tell us, are you buying Alcorn or are you buying Prairie View? Because I think now it's come down to one of those two. Who is it? Who's gonna come out the West? And yes, before we get a little bit too crazy, yeah, we know Southern could reemerge. Anything can happen. It's still early, but it's the first quarter. The first quarter of the season, you got to buy stock in somebody. Is it Alcorn or Prairie View? I'm going to look in the polls here. I'm going to take a look. I'm going to see who we're buying. Come back on the other side. Let's talk about that Virginia Union Fayetteville State contest on the other side. You're watching the BCSN Sports Wrap. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
That's a pretty tight spot.
Watch this.
Of course you're beautiful.
Because at the heart of every Buick SUV is you.
Follow the Black College Sports Network on social media at MyBCSN1, the number 1, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyBCSN1.
You see, Head & Shoulders has scalp shield technology, protects against flakes, even between washes. It's never not working.
Kind of like us. Number 15?
Never not working.
I don't like this one.
Me neither.
Let's get out of here.
Head & Shoulders scalp shield, never not working.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
For 5-star backyards, Yellowwood brand pressure-treated pine. If it doesn't have this yellow tag, you don't want it.
It's like a loot machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
Fulford, AD Drew here. Coming out of the break, or heading into the break, rather, I asked everybody, who were you buying stock in, Alcorn or Prairie View? And it seems like overwhelmingly people are buying Alcorn stock, Drew. I'm not surprised. Although
you got a
of
veteran coach there. Fred's been there. Fred has won. Bubba McDowell's going to be good, but he doesn't have any history yet. So I'm going. You're going to take the safe stock.
You know what? That's a good way of describing that, because although I did pick Alcorn, I do like the Prairie View team. Again, a lot of things to like. So that game. What's the date on that game? When those? I don't know how far ahead. I got the schedule right here.
November 15th, I believe, is what I just saw with Prairie View. And
November 4th. November 4th at Prairie
November
View.
5th.
4th.
November 5th.
4th. 4. Alcorn's site says. Alcorn's
Oh,
website
that's right. That's
says
a Friday
it's a Friday.
game. That is a Friday game. You are correct.
Yes, it's a Friday game, which sucks. I don't understand why that is but it's on ESPNU, so maybe that's a good thing. But there's a lot that can happen in the month of October. So
like they do have Southern in October, and that game being October 15th.
Yes. So look, a lot of football left to play. We can't look too far ahead, but just putting that out there. There's still a lot of ball to play. And I know the coaches will give the speech. We got to play one game at a time. Can't look too far ahead. Got to look at the next
They
opponent.
got to play one game at a time. We don't have to speculate one game at a time, though.
Right. Okay, let's move over. We'll come back and circle into some of the other Division I games. But our other top game from the weekend was on the non-D1 level. Was a CIAA matchup. CIAA North versus the South. Virginia Union, who's widely considered the number one team in the non-D1, mid-major, D2 level, however you want to categorize it, they are pretty much the consensus number one team coming into this matchup against Fayetteville State, who been the bridesmaids the last 3 seasons to Bowie. And this was their opportunity, Drew. And look, as much as I told you I was rooting for them against UNC Pembroke to finally get it done, they failed me. Here they are with a home game against Union. And look, last week, the North beat the South 4-2. CIAA North versus the South. This week, it was even worse. 5-1, the North dominated the South. And this was your marquee matchup as Union gets a 31-28 victory. Actually, Fayetteville got out to a 14-0 lead, Drew, and even had as much as a lead going into, I believe, the fourth quarter by a touchdown. And then Union gets a score by Brady Myers gets a field goal. Then probably the biggest play might have been a pick six that was thrown by Kari Lane. Kari Lane, I think, threw 3 interceptions in the ball game. As good as he looked offensively, he threw 3 picks, including the pick six, which then gave Union the lead. Union came back later on their next drive, and Jada Byers does what he does, and pretty much that was all she wrote. A late touchdown by Fayetteville cut a 10-point deficit to 3. But outscored 17-7 in the fourth quarter. And Drew, you said it earlier, so kind of repeat your thoughts. But Fayetteville just ate that another blown opportunity.
Yeah, another blown opportunity by the Fayetteville State Broncos. They had the opportunity to show that they need to be respected in the CIAA when it comes to northern competition. They dominate the South. They've dominated the South for the last 5 years. 5 years they have dominated the South, but they have not been able to win against the upper echelon of the North. This includes Bowie State, Virginia Union, Virginia State, and Shawan when Shawan was good, but when Bryce Witt was the quarterback at Shawan, they've had their struggles. So There's nothing that shows me that Union will not beat not only Fayetteville. If Fayetteville's the class of the South, it's going to come down to Union State for the CIAA North, and then the championship game will be let's not get anybody hurt. Let's get to the playoffs. Now, let's talk about this guy. What's his name? Brian, the running back, Jada. Oh yeah, Jada Byers, Brian.
Jada Byers, yeah.
Jada Byers had 161 yards on the day. That brings him to Brian. You're a person who likes to play numbers. Like to
love numbers. Love numbers.
How about the number 777?
A lucky number.
777.
Cha-ching.
Well,
cha-ching.
That's how many yards he's accumulated on the ground this year, Brian. 777 yards through 4 games. Let me forecast this forward. At the pace that he's on, at 192 yards per game, he will run for over 2,100 yards in an 11-game regular season. In order to have an 11-game regular season, Union has to make it to the CIAA championship game. So, one of those two things will correlate. If Jada Byers runs for 2,000 yards, Union will be in the CIAA championship game. There's no question about it. One thing you cannot do against this team, you cannot trail this team in the fourth quarter, because all they're going to do is turn around and hand the ball to Byers, and he's going to milk the clock for you. You better have a lead in the fourth quarter, and you better be up by more than 1 touchdown, because Jada Byers has been known to score on 1 or 2 play drives by himself.
Yeah. And you said this is week 4, right? So only 4 weeks of the season, correct? Yes. First time that Union has been 4-0 since 2007. I saw that just on their website. And then while you were talking, I said, let me go punch up the NCAA.com stats. Let me see where Jada Byers is ranked on the D2 level. Oh, yeah. Guess where he's sitting? Number one, sitting right there, almost 73 yards ahead of a young man from Southwest Minnesota State. There's only 3 players in the country that have rushed for over 700 yards through this past Saturday, Jada Byers being number 1. And got to give an honorable mention to Emmanuel Wilson of Fort Valley State, who is number 7 in the nation with 542 yards. So, but you know, I did want to mention one of the things that I like about Union, and when we talked to Dr. Parker, you know, the fact that they won that Valdosta State game on the road. And again, I mentioned to him that his 3 biggest opponents, and he's aware of this, you know, Fayetteville State, Bowie, and Virginia State are all road games. So imagine playing, when you look at a schedule, Drew, like, you know, you look at your 10 games schedule and you see, doggone, the 4 toughest games we have on paper, okay, are all road games. Virginia Union 2-0 so far on those road games. And so a very impressive team. Even in a game where Fayetteville State outgained them by about 50 yards, outgained them by almost 200 yards in the air, this Virginia Union team is legitimate, and they are for real. Just very quickly, the CIAA North, we did mention, went 5-1 this week. Last week they were 4-2. I believe they have one more North versus South matchup coming this week, and then they go into what do you call it? What is it? Interdivisional matchups where you have
inner.
Yeah, okay, interdivisional matchups. And so I got to give a shout out to Lincoln, PA. Mentioned this earlier this morning. Lincoln, PA.
Before you get off of Lincoln, PA, one other stat about Virginia Union. When you only score 31 points in a game, and it hurts your average, let's keep that into perspective. You only score 31 points in a ball game, and it hurts your scoring average. But Union is still number 1 in the nation by over 1 point per game at 48.8 points per game. Now we can move on.
Well said. Well said. Offensive juggernaut, Virginia Union Panthers. Go get your gear now, folks. Virginia Union's for real. Hey, so the where was I going here? The CIAA, Lincoln, PA gets its first road win since 2009, and they are sitting at 2-2. Drew, 1-1 in the conference. Now, you might say, as you said earlier, all 2-2s aren't the same. Well, I'll tell you why this 2-2 is pretty significant. They have not won two or more games in almost 7 years. 2015 was the last time that Lincoln, PA, they won 3 games that season. After that, they've either gone winless or have just won a game. And those games are usually against either Johnson C. Smith or Elizabeth City or maybe Livingstone. And I'm just unofficially predicting that those are the 3 teams that they've beaten those years. And if you don't beat those teams, then you're not getting a win, right? And I love there's a viral video that I've seen running around of a coach from Johnson C. Smith talking about, I think it was Friday night, saying, all right, we're going to get our first win of the season against Lincoln. And Lincoln did the good old quote retweet about how'd that work out for you? I just love it. I just love it.
Hey, Bryan, let's think about this. Lincoln 2-2, 1-1 in conference.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have thunk it? Yes, I said thunk. Would you have thunk
it? Like what?
That Lincoln would have the same record as Bowie State and Fayetteville State at this point in time in the season?
No, I would not have.
All 3 of those teams are 2-2, 1-1.
Well, look, hey, very interesting how the CIAA is rolling early. Shaw is now sitting in first place in the South, 2-0 after a 35-16 win over EC at Elizabeth City. So, yeah, there's nothing about this season in the CIAA looks normal right now. And so it only makes for some interesting matchups during the course of the year. And just a reminder, the CIAA going to the 8-game conference schedule. So all of these matchups in the
Virginia State game this weekend then.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because that becomes
for Virginia State than for Shaw.
You know what? I don't know. I don't think there's an either or because you have to win this game to stay relevant in the division or in the standings, right? Both of these teams need to stay unbeaten as much as possible because look, Shaw's big matchup, of course, is going to come against Fayetteville State. But I think for Shaw, if Shaw can pull out a victory, they've already beaten Bowie. Now you can turn around and beat Virginia State. That means you've beaten what? Let's easily say 2 of the top 3 or 4 teams from the North. I mean that's got to make you feel really good when you run into that game against Fayetteville State. And so that's
Fayetteville State does host Shaw this year on October 29th.
Right. So there's an opportunity there for Fayetteville State may still find their way in the CIAA championship. It's still possible. But, just right now, they're licking their wounds. Let's jump over to the SIAC, Drew. Of course, Drew writes for D2Football.com covering the SIAC. The top 3 teams out of the East, Benedict, Fort Valley State, Albany State, all got wins, strong wins. You and Jamie Walker called the Benedict game a 40-14 win over Kentucky State. But you said something kind of interesting to me, Drew, and seeing how the polls have been lately, Benedict. Let me see. I'm saying, where's Benedict currently coming into this week? Benedict was number 3, getting some first place votes, but I don't think you were one of those first place voters because you don't seem too sold on Benedict, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Don't get me wrong. Benedict is a good team, especially defensively. They are a good team. Benedict's defense may be on the level that Albany State's defense was last year. Still need a couple more games. Put on my inner bike wash. I still need a couple more data points to quantify that. But they are trending towards what Albany State did on last year. Not quite at that level, but just below that level for Albany State of last year. Benedict's deficiency, if it's going to hurt them, will be their kicking game. They're 1 for 5 on field goals this year, I do believe. 1 for 5 on field goals this year. Can't win a close ball game like that. They, in this game against Kentucky State, when the game was still very much in question. Matter of fact, I think they were trailing at one point in time when this happened. The punter did not punt the ball for a first down. Or like a 4th and 8. Let's think about that. And then there was another time where the punt may have gone 15 yards. So he shanked 2 of them off the side of his foot. You cannot have that, especially when you have as good of a defensive team as Benedict has. All you got to do is back them up and let these guys make the opponent go 70, 80 yards. And that defense will make the play. That defense will make a play early. If you get into the midfield, they let you get down. They'll bend. They won't break. That defense is that good. Other thing is they've got the 2 quarterback system with Lampley and Phoenix. Yesterday, Lampley was clearly the better quarterback of the two. Phoenix was clearly the better quarterback of the two with 4 touchdowns passes on the day. But Lampley did have the other touchdown on the day for Benedict. So they are like two different styles of quarterback. Phoenix is the quarterback who will take off and run. Lampley he'll scramble, but he's looking to get the ball down the field as he's scrambling. And the one thing I like about Benedict, they've got a 3-headed monster in the backfield to run the ball. Benedict, another one of these teams, don't let them be up on you in the 4th quarter because they will eat the clock. By the way, Brian, yesterday, 2:40. 2:40 was the game time.
You called it. Hey, look, because I was wondering because I tried to call you guys at 9 o'clock while I'm still somewhere in.
And I was already to call.
Yeah, see, I was calling you guys in the 4th quarter of the FAMU game, and yeah, no one's answering the phones. I'm like, where are these guys? The stream went off, and I'm like, don't tell me this game is over. But then I remembered, Drew said it'd probably be 2.5 hours, and sure enough, that game was over, 2:40.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty good stuff. Pretty good stuff. Across the rest of the SIAC, of course, Fort Valley. That was a top 10 matchup. You poo-pooed it already. The fact that Bluefield State was ranked number 10. Fort Valley is one of those top 4, top 5 teams. They got a 44-27 victory on the road at Bluefield. Tuskegee got win 701 against Allen University. Miles with a 20-point victory over Central State. Lane keeps Edward Waters in the winless column with a 20-9 win. And Morehouse defeated Savannah State 15-3.
Look, the top 5 teams. I was going to say the top 5 teams in the SIAC all won this past weekend. I'll say top 5 teams based on preseason predicted order of finish. You had your 3 teams in the East: Albany State, Fort Valley State, Benedict, and in the West you had Tuskegee and Miles also won.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a short break. come back with some sort of wrap up some notes about the Division One level, give out a few grades, and then coming up shortly, the BCSN Top 5. I know that's what you guys are waiting on, the BCSN Top 5, so that's coming up here shortly. You're watching the BCSN Sports Wrap with Bryan and AD. We'll be back in just a moment. This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here are the BCSN Sports Wrap, Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, the pregame show, the Carlos Brown Show, the ONG Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
Maureen is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon, so now she's free to become Maureen the Merrier. Food is her love language, and she really loves her grandson. Like, really loves.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
Mobile banking from Truist actually works for you. It gives you simple, smart, personalized insights to keep you one step ahead. Because we think that's the kind of control you deserve over your money. When you start with care, you get a different kind of bank. Truist. Download the mobile app now.
It's like a loot machine. Going around town, trying to get down.
That's a pretty tight spot.
Watch this.
Trap, Bryan and AD here, special guest right now, rejoining us from a couple weeks ago. Glad to have you back in there, Kelvin Carter. Kelvin, how you doing, my man?
Hey, doing well, man. Enjoying this great Sunday.
All right. Good to hear. Let's start with your Alcorn State Braves. I give you a chance to kind of jump in and talk about how excited, one of the questions that I put out to people was who are they buying? I don't know if you caught the first half hour or the last segment or two put out there to folks between Prairie View's win and Alcorn State's win. You kind of look at those two wins and those two teams in comparison. A lot of people jumping off the Southern bandwagon. I asked the question, who are you buying? Alcorn or Prairie View? Seem to be overwhelmingly on the side of Alcorn. I know you're buying Alcorn, but tell me what your thoughts are after the win against UAPB.
Well, I did notice one thing. The running back room is really good for Alcorn State University. I'm not all the way buying them right now because what I've seen is we really got an opportunity to see great coaching, recognize a deficiency on the UAPB side, and really rush the ball. I mean, he rushed for 24 carries, 295 yards, but it leads me to believe something else. We could get nothing going in the passing game with an efficient passer. So I'm not all the way buying, but I'll take them this time. But we must begin to see what we're going to be able to do when teams just stack the box and force us to throw the ball.
So you're not buying. So is it what, the passing attack that you're not buying offensively? What's your hesitation in your level of excitement after 4 games?
Well, I'm just not excited. The passing game is just not developed as a dependable component. So we already know moving forward, especially with the biggest game on campus on November 19th against Jackson State University, they're going to bump and run on the sides, load the box with Aubrey Miller and those guys, and will we be able to pass the football? And I think we have to prove that we're going to be able to pass the football in these next 3 games. It's proven we can run it. I mean, Nico Duffy is a phenomenal back. Javion Howard's a phenomenal back. The running game is proven. However, I think it was more or less proven against some lackluster defenses with regards to that.
Okay. All right, guys. Let's finish up and put a bow on the Division One level from the past weekend. Very quickly, I will mention that the MEAC, after going 4-1 last week and getting a lot of praise from a lot of us, this week they go 3. And that one win was courtesy of North Carolina Central, who we all predicted to beat VU Lynchburg, Virginia Lynchburg. They beat them like 59-14. Another big day for Davius Richard. I don't care to go any too deep into the MEAC other than mentioning the one big loss was, I think, the South Carolina State loss to North Carolina A&T. And we talked about, Drew, last week that game, we both kind of felt that game was a must-win for somebody. Probably a bigger game for A&T than it was for South Carolina State. North Carolina A&T beat State for the 7th consecutive time. So that was pretty impressive for the Aggies. What are your thoughts on A&T? Does this kind of set them up in a good place going into their conference? And have you soured at all on South State, or are you kind of just saying, well, non-conference game, they were here in the same spot last year? And then... Drew, am I on mute?
I had lost audio there for a second. Don't know if it was my end. But yeah.
Okay, that was...
It's more of the same, for lack of a better word, when it comes to South Carolina State. Look, South Carolina State is, truthfully, all they care about is winning the MEAC, getting to the Celebration Bowl, and I'm gonna steal your line, Kelvin, getting the bag. That's all South Carolina State really cares about, is getting the bag at the end, because they will probably only have 2 wins going into MEAC conference play. And that other win will be VUL, who VUL probably has a tougher strength of schedule, sidebar, probably has a tougher strength of schedule than half of our FCS teams do, because that's all they play is FCS, it seems like. But irregardless, Kendrell Flowers was not available for this game. I'm assuming he was out hurt. So if I would have known that going into this game, I would have definitely leaned towards A&T, because when Richard has to throw the ball 50 times for South Carolina State, forget who the quarterback is. For a Buddy Few team to throw the ball 50 times, Buddy, we don't pass anywhere, even on the interstate in the fast lane. Pew, nah, it's not a good point.
Kelvin, what are your thoughts? A&T, South Carolina State.
Definitely show. Now he did some fast lane. I mean, he threw. The numbers were incredible. He had the 4 touchdowns, 126 passer rating, 316 yards. With 2 interceptions to go with that, by the way. I tend to lean with Drew. I think that they're playing for conference play and to make their way back to the Celebration Bowl. It will be really, really interesting if they make it back, because the MEAC SWAC Challenge is set up for next year, JSU and South Carolina State. So all of this could roll into, it wouldn't be intentional, but if they make it back to the Celebration Bowl and JSU makes it, then you got the same game back to back on a rematch. So I'm looking forward to seeing what South Carolina State does moving forward with their next opponent.
Just to looking ahead here at A&T's schedule, they begin Big South play coming up where they take on Bryant University. Again, this was A&T was favored, by the people in the Big South. So they've got Bryant University coming up. Then they've got Edward Waters, and that's after a bye. So they've got Bryant, then they've got a bye. Then they go into Edward Waters, and then they've got a couple other games, Robert Morris, and then the Campbell game is at the end of October. So it'll be kind of interesting seeing A&T, of course, trying to position themselves for a playoff bid. And obviously, if they can win the Big South, they can find themselves in the playoffs, and that's what they're fighting for. So I think for them, kind of interesting seeing them get going. And South Carolina State, I guess we just kind of wait to see what happens with them. Let's jump over quickly a couple of games we didn't mention in the SWAC. Jackson State, 49 straight points after giving up a touchdown early. 49-7 victory over Mississippi Valley State. Thank you, Jackson State, for covering the over. Drew, any quick thoughts there on Jackson State and Valley?
I'm sorry.
Never in doubt. Never in doubt.
Jackson State pretty much covered the over by themselves. I think the over was like 51 or 52 points, when Jackson State had 49 of them. It
was 14-7 at half. Hey, I'm not gonna lie, it was 14-7 at half, and I was nervous. I was about this nervous, and then I realized, oh yeah, Jackson State, they're gonna turn it on coming out of whatever they have a bad half. I know the third quarter is gonna be lit up. So yeah, they took care of business. What was it we were talking about earlier, Drew, about them having a bye? They got a bye week, and Coach Sanders gave them a week off. What was that?
Yeah, they'll practice Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. They'll be off the rest of the week after that. They'll come back to the lab on a week from today, on Sunday, to prepare for Alabama State, who they are Alabama State's homecoming opponent.
You know what? So, and that's a very pro schedule, right? I mean, Coach Sanders, that's a very professional mindset that he's got those guys in. It's like that's what we do. That's how the schedule rolls in the pro level, right? Where guys, you kind of get that time off. You may have a day or two for meetings, just workouts, and then what? You kind of come in and then and then you go from there. Any quick thoughts there, Kelvin, on Jackson State? How about, or any thoughts on Valley on the other side of that?
Well, I just think Valley right now is suffering from not a lack of talent per se, but it's becoming evident the way the Jackson State roster is built that their twos are really coming along as formidable factors, and that's how in building a program. And I think it's a lot being made of the homecoming piece. I think guys kind of play into it, but within the SWAC, when SWAC play starts, it's just inadvertent that you're going to end up somebody's homecoming. It's not going to be one of those scenarios where, a guy can manipulate the schedule to have, I'll give you a prime example. I went to Alcorn State University, and we played Prairie View for years, and it was almost a foregone conclusion that we were going to win. But all of a sudden, Prairie View got into a power space. They started winning ball games, and then it began the of homecoming, and I believe we might have lost one of those games. So I think some coaches use this as an over-motivational tool, whereas it's just scheduling. It's just going to happen. But his roster is deep. I mean, very deep, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
I was just taking a peek here at Valley's schedule. The next 3 weeks, they're at FAMU, they host Alcorn, and they're at Alabama State. And so I'm sitting here thinking, where is a win gonna? Because I wasn't one of these people that was saying.
Bryan, I would cut you off. FAMU barely got out of it. Be the last year with the W. So
Oh,
don't
here you
look
go.
past.
Here you go.
Don't look past. I mean,
I'm not.
even though it's at Bragg and FAMU where we put the 13-game home winning streak on the line. Let's not forget last year, FAMU struggled. I mean, they struggled. If that game was 58 minutes, FAMU may have lost that game, but it was a full 60, and FAMU won that game. So, Alcorn, Valley, on paper, Alcorn should be the favorite, but it's Alcorn Valley. Anything can happen when those teams from Mississippi get together. Point blank. Kelvin will tell you that anything can happen when those two Mississippi teams get together.
I don't believe that, Kelvin. Thank you, Kelvin. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that. That's like coach speak, Drew. That's coach speak.
No.
Thank you, Kelvin.
I'm being very clear with this. Somebody just put it in the chat. Valley has talent, but they're working with limited resources. I will tell you this: if you go to campus, you'll kind of get a feel for that. You know, like when you walk up and you see what you see, you'll see that if they're close to winning, that might as well be a win for them, based upon the scenario that they're working in. So it's very challenging for me. That's the reason why I think Coach Sanders always says his dear friend, and before he scores 49 straight on him in the second half, my dear friend Coach Danzy, who's doing amazing work. It's just so challenging based upon the conditions that they're working in.
You go boy for change folks people. And
I'm looking at this thought. Okay, so look, let's talk about the elephant in the room for a second. How long are we supposed to just be okay with Valley being in this valley, no pun intended, and nobody say anything? Or maybe they are saying it, but nobody's listening. Look, I know the state of Mississippi is dealing with some stuff right now on some different levels, with some lawsuits and some money being misappropriated and things like that. But it really seems like the Valley lack of resource thing. Last week, were we talking about them dropping to D2? Drew, but that's not a reality that I think is going to happen. So at what point is someone going to talk about a resolution or a fix to this? Because I'm just, look, if that's a bigger discussion, I know. Go ahead.
It's a bigger discussion. I'm just gonna put this one point out there, and y'all may pull my alumni card for saying this. FAMU is Valley with a few more resources right now.
Wow.
Facilities with a few more facilities. The dysfunction at FAMU right now is almost on the level that Valley has had for years, and the dysfunction that FAMU has had for years in their athletic department are very similar. The only thing is FAMU started ahead of Valley with facilities and a few more resources, but other than that, they're very similar.
Well, the real elephant in the room, guys, and people in the state of Mississippi know this. Take Jackson State out of the scenario. There's an undercurrent that is attempting to merge and or blend those institutions with other state institutions, because you mentioned D2. Delta State is right up the street. And if you go to those two facilities, both similar in the same area, it's like night and day. And when you see it
Delta State is who?
Delta State is in Cleveland, Mississippi. Go south. Yep.
No. I mean, where are they? You're saying they're right there in the Valley. They're in the same area as Valley, Mississippi Valley State?
Oh, yeah.
Next county over, if I remember correct.
Yeah, it's the next county over. And if you go to Delta State and then drive to Valley, in your mind, you would have to say, there has to be a reason they are doing this. And the narrative around it is, and it's been this way for the last decade, is they're trying to push it to where the Valley would have to merge with Delta State. That's the elephant in the room that most Mississippians know about. And that's what the person in the piece just put in the chat. Delta State they're better than probably half the SWAC teams right now because of the way they're funded. But Drew told me yesterday, about the number of scholarships which are offered, it doesn't make sense that Delta State is better. But if you underfund one so low, then those 33 scholarships or whatever they get at the D2 level can beat the scholarships that you have at the Division I AA level.
Yeah, I think, Drew, I know we do I mean, we gonna have to do a midweek podcast on the Valley situation, because it's we constantly come up with it. I feel like Valley's this stepchild that we don't really talk about, but we all continue to say the same thing every week and say, oh, their losses because of resources. It's probably very legitimate that it is. But how many weeks and years are we going to continue to say that?
Right. My family roots are from that area. My mother's generation is from that area of Mississippi. That's why that Valley piece, kind of strikes a nerve with me.
Yeah.
My family roots are not that far from Cleveland, Mississippi, where Delta State is. So when I've gone to grandparents' house, I've been to Cleveland to go shopping. So I understand that everything that Kelvin is talking about right here.
Well, here's the other part that makes it so alarming. You go from Archie Cooley, Theophilus Danzy, and those guys, and that type of competitive atmosphere with Jerry Rice and those guys playing, and growing up watching this and seeing the competitive nature of the Valley, to then seeing everyone else's resources continue to improve upon time. And like you said, this is something that I've seen for the better part of a quarter of a century. So if I'm complaining about what Alcorn has and the lack of resources, just imagine what somebody at the Valley is talking about in terms of lack of resources.
All right. Well, I know a few people here that and some of them in our chat room here that I'm gonna reach out to, because I want to just kind of bring in and just have that deeper discussion regarding Valley. I'm not trying to solve any problems, but I am trying to get a little more information out there and clarity, but just even from a historical standpoint, because I think, again, we all talk around it, and there's a few people who are very well educated on it and know it, lived in it, seeing it, but we don't really talk about it because of whatever reason. Other schools are having success, and then it's all framed around athletics and athletic success. So again, as we talk about the SWAC conference moving up, well, Valley has been one of those staples in the SWAC. So my big question will be, how is the conference looking at Valley, and how will the conference help Valley rise up? Can they? Will they? I'm just posing questions, not trying to get an answer today, right now.
Bryan, I hope it doesn't come to what happened with Savannah State for all those years. Now Savannah State moved from Division II to Division I, joined the MEAC conference. Now Valley's obviously a different animal, because Valley has been in the SWAC conference since I want to say the 40s. Don't quote me on that. I see Dr. Gaville is on the chat. He could actually give me the year, but I believe Valley was in there before Jackson State was in the SWAC, if I have my history right. I'm not 100% sure on that. But they may get to that point, that realization that Savannah State got to, where it just was not financially viable for them to remain in the SWAC. We hope it does not get to that. I'm not wishing that on them. But here's the thing. Savannah State had the benefit of being able to go back to an HBCU conference, being the SIAC, their former home. If Valley leaves the SWAC conference, where are they going to land? Does the SIAC go that far west and let Valley into the SIAC? Geographically, they're in the Gulf South Conference. Geographically, so do they lose their blackness and go to the whiteness and go to a white conference? Do they force them to merge with the Delta State? These are some realities that you possess may have to be answered within the next 5 years.
Yeah, but Drew, who are we? And I don't know why. Why is that? Why is them moving down something being even discussed and talked about? I mean, look,
because they have a budget that's smaller than a lot of D2s, and they're playing on the D1 level. That's number one. Number two, they don't have the facilities befitting a Division 1 institution. I don't care if it's black, white, green, or yellow. Their facilities are not up to Division 1 standards right now.
That basketball, that arena. No, I disagree with you. That arena,
facilities are not. Overall, their facilities are not. They're struggling. This may be their first year that they fully funded all of their scholarships in football, which is why they could not play any of those much needed check games. But then you're going to put the value and these kids' safety potentially in jeopardy by going out and playing a check game against a school. So there are a lot of things that may be intentionally or unintentionally working against Valley. Power to the Delta Devils for persevering through what they have. And I know they have a plan for it, but Bryan, you and I both know we can have the best plan in the world. Sometimes reality has to set in. And I hope it does not set in. I hope they continue to crawl along that road. I hope they do not fall down and cannot get up.
Well, I think another thing too, as we kind of transition past this piece, is that in the chat is saying that their budget across the board is sad. Let's just kind of take the football piece out. You mentioned that great arena. I'm of this belief, and I love to admire that East Coast. I forget which conference with Morgan State and that group in Winston-Salem out there with the basketball tournament. I admire that because with basketball, it takes 12 players. You need 12 players, and you can, if you can get you a couple of good recruits in there, you can assimilate a pretty good product. Ask the guys down at Texas Southern with Dr. Kevin Granger's doing an amazing job with basketball. Landon Bussey just came over, did a great job with basketball at Alcorn State University, and we're secluded where our competition is Jackson. Just let it be said, I don't know from a physical perspective if the move down would even shift anything that's happening. I don't think moving down would make them more competitive, as they have more problems or more challenges around budget than just where they play. They can stay in the SWAC and finish middle of the road, let Danzig get a class of kids that become seniors, and Valley is a problem to deal with for that time, and then they'll have to cycle back down again. So that's what we really have to look at. And they joined in the 1968-69 academic year, joined the SWAC.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Dr. Cavill, for putting that in the chat.
And one of the things that I talked about how, and I saw Doc put this in the chat, is the impact of the television contracts and how the funds that come from those ad dollars and the relationships that are being built now will go towards helping all the schools. Obviously, some schools will benefit more. I mean, they'll all benefit, but some schools like Valley, you will really benefit from getting that extra money from the TV contracts and things of that nature. And again, like I said, I got us off onto this tangent, but again, I just hate constantly talking about Valley losses, then we go to budget, and it just, lack of resources, and we continue to tie all that together. And I know that coaching staff and everybody is trying to fight against that and just play good football, gather the troops and put everybody in the best position to win ball games, and it is interesting how money and resources equate to wins, losses, and championships. That's a great study for somebody's thesis. I might need to start working on that to get mine ready.
It's been done.
You know, yeah. But I it makes me want, in this day and age of this, where you have the television rights and contracts and the increased value that schools are making now. It's just a fascinating. Go ahead, Kelvin.
No, I had just one question of both of you. If you see that something is broken and there's no apparent fix within the immediate future, for the safety and well-being of it until you can do it right, would it be better not to fund a football program in its entirety and really focus on all of your other sports? Because this is one that you can't get right due to the lack of funding. So my whole question is, and I heard this from a SWAC coach say, do we do things that we claim are culture that don't make sense? So does it make more sense to take your funds and equitably spend them in the proper way to support basketball, men's and women's basketball, tennis, whatever other sports you have there, as opposed to, because your football team cannot be generating revenue for you, but you're spending money on them.
That's an interesting question. I think there's a lot of that's a tough one, man. I can't answer that right in this time space, because I don't think we got enough time to hear my mind and the gears in my mind go around in circles trying to answer that. I will say that I think there's a lot of the fact that there is so much history and tradition in Valley and their football program. And there are cycles. There are wins and losses. There are cycles. There are ebbs and flows to everybody's season. Not everybody. Their dynasties don't last forever. Everybody has cycles of good and bad. That's a great question, Kelvin. I don't have. Go ahead, Drew. Answer however you want to answer. I don't have an answer for you, Kelvin. It's a great question.
I'm just gonna put it. We talked about this budget, and it's not all football. I'm taking a look at the basketball schedule. Of the 14 non-conference games that Valley have, 13 of them on the men's side are on the road, and the one that they have at home is the Friday before Thanksgiving. Just a day when you're not going to have a whole lot of kid support, because if they don't have school that next week, they're going to be packing up Thursday and leaving campus. They probably won't even be there that Friday before Thanksgiving. And on the women's side, they have 2 of 11 non-conference games at home, and one of those is during the week of Thanksgiving. So even though you're playing at home, you're not going to have the fan support that you would typically want to see. The other one is at home on December 1st against Utah for the Lady Devils.
Yeah, there's a lot of this.
This is actually a strange piece, and I know we have to transition. I watched a SWAC school that will remain nameless fly into Milwaukee. It's the men's basketball team. They flew into Milwaukee, played the University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, then drove over and played the Badgers of Wisconsin. Took a charter bus to Chicago and played DePaul. Took the same bus down 55 and played St. Louis University. Took the same bus down 55 and played Arkansas State. And I talked with the coach, Travis Ford of St. Louis U, and I asked him how much they paid Valley. He said we paid him about $28,000. But he said he almost wanted to cancel the game because he did not have a physically able opponent after they came off of a 6-game road trip. They flew and rode a bus, and then they rode a bus all the way back to their destination in Mississippi just for a bag to try to close the gaps of underfunding.
Yeah, that's asking a lot.
Let's take it to break, Brian.
Yeah, let's take it to break. Come back after this. We'll debut the BCSN top 5 coming up after the break. Maybe give out a few grades and then start looking ahead to what's coming up in week number, what are we in, week 5? Week 5, my goodness.
Into week 5
already here. Man, heading into week 5. All right, you're watching the BCSN Sports Wrap. We'll be back in just a moment.
That's a pretty tight spot.
Watch this.
Of course your Buick works. It's
Your life, because at the heart of every Buick SUV is you.
Follow the Black College Sports Network on social media at MyBCSN1, the number 1, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyBCSN1.
You see, Head & Shoulders has scalp shield technology, protects against flakes, even between washes. It's never not working.
Kind of like us. Number 15?
Never not working.
I don't like this one.
Me neither.
Let's get out of here.
Head & Shoulders scalp shield, never not working.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
For 5-star backyards, Yellowwood brand pressure-treated pine. If it doesn't have this yellow tag, you don't want it.
It's like a loot machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
All right, welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Brian Fulford here. Let me make sure. I thought it might be on mute. Nope. Bryan, AD, and Kelvin Carter here joining us. Hey, one again, thank everybody. You guys are dropping some good nuggets and some good discussion in the chat room. And I'm going to apologize I'm the one who steered us left into that conversation in the last segment. Clearly, it's a very nuanced thing, and it was totally unresearched and prepared, and so but we've got people here who you're in it, lived it, and you're aware of it. So I appreciate your comments, Kelvin. I didn't know we were gonna steer that way. So again, my apologies for driving us that way, Drew. But it was just one of those things that is like, oh, look, car accident. And I just drove that way to kind of see what was going on. And
you caused another accident.
Cause another one, or we just end up hanging out watching the scene for like an hour. So that's what that felt like. But I am serious about some parts of that, about wanting to do more, or a series of little things just to kind of, from a historical perspective, just ask some questions and see what kind of answers we get, just to educate ourselves. And I think that's needed. So, all right, let's give some grades. I know we got to keep it moving here because we got the top 5 that we got to get out. Let's give some grades. Let's start over in the major division. Again, we're looking at grades from out of the HBCU Pro Sports Media Association Top 10 poll, where Jackson State is the number 1 undisputed school. Now, what's interesting about the poll and the results, only among the top 5, really among the top 7, 8, among the top 8, only Jackson State and North Carolina Central, who are 1 and 2, they won handily. And then you had Alcorn State, who was, they were sitting at 6th. But all around them, you had Hampton lose to Delaware. You had Alabama State, of course, losing. You had South Carolina State losing. Delaware State losing. You had Arkansas Pine Bluff losing. So a lot of losses. So there's going to be some shuffling in the top 10. Let's start with our guest, Kelvin. Who gets your best grade from the top 10 teams?
Before you get to Kelvin, I was going to say that. Hey, Brian, can we just go ahead and give Jackson State their A since they busting the curve for the whole rest of the class?
But they might not have gotten the A+, Drew. So I'm just, I mean, look, we understand Jackson State they are the standard, but you know why I can't give them an A+? Because they got scored on first. They were down 7-0, not giving them an A+ when you got scored on the opening possession. And then you were 14-7 at halftime. See? Go ahead, Kelvin.
I'm with Drew. Let's grade on the curve, but I would give Alcorn an A. That running attack was just phenomenal. It was even more phenomenal to watch. Props to HBCU go with the game, with great clarity with the game. But I'm just saying, that running attack was amazing. And to just see it just completely take over, and to see a coach really stick to his guns on what needed to happen for them to win. So I give them an A for coming back in that game, being steady. So they get an A, not an A+, but an A.
All right, that's your best grade from the weekend. Drew, your best grade goes to whom?
Well, obviously, I'm throwing Jackson State out because they get their mandatory A. And now for redundancy purposes, I'm not going to mention Alcorn. I actually want to go with Prairie View and give them an A-. They played a good game against Alabama State. They held on in that particular game until they were finally able to get over the top, caused a couple of turnovers in order to get them over the top in that game late. So I have to give it A- to Prairie View A&M.
Okay, you give them an A. You give them an A-. That was my team. I'm going to give them a solid A, real close to an A+, for the simple fact that of all of the top 10 teams, they were the only one that went on the road and got a dub. Went on the road to Alabama State, got a win, which is hard to get wins on the road, even though you're home road favorite. So they covered the spread. They went on the road, got a win. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that, and hold on, did they win the turnover? I think they won every category. They might get the A+ here from me, Drew. Let me double check here real quick, because I'm looking at the team stats now. Let me see. Even though they outgained them on total yardage, total passing, total rushing, Alabama State did take the lead on a couple of things. So solid A performance by Prairie View A&M. So that would be my best grade, as you said, of the week. All right, let's go worst grade from the weekend. Kelvin, who you got? Worst grade?
Worst grade might be Alabama A&M. Even with them not playing, I just thought they actually had a chance against FAM. and I thought that they would, round in a little bit better. Fam was having their own sense of turmoil, but they hung in there. Only a 7. The differential was only 13 points with them. I just think that's who gets my worst grade on that end.
All right, Drew, what about you?
South Carolina State, 22 yards rushing. 12 attempts, 22 yards rushing. Thank God they got a 6'5" receiver named Shaq Davis, because that was pretty much the highlight of the day, get the ball to him for those touchdown passes that he was able to catch. I believe he got either 3 or 4 touchdowns in this particular game. But other than that, obviously without your top running back at South Carolina State, totally different ball game than what everybody expected. Laid the egg.
I see. I'm just kind of peeking in the chat room. I see Israel Carey giving Grambling an F. Although Grambling is not in the top 10. Yeah,
that
performance. Thank you. That there's no G, so it's just rambling Tigers or tires with the
no G.
Get the F. Yeah, my F goes to Alabama A&M. Alabama A&M, you get the F. You get outscored 31-0. Huh? Well, hear me out. I was there. I'm giving them an F. 31. They get outscored 31, and it really shouldn't have been an F, because I thought there were moments where they looked pretty good. They did throw 2 interceptions, I believe, or they had 2 turnovers that went. Alabama A&M had, again, they had a period where they were up 19-7 before they gave up a very good a 2-minute drive, or less than 2 minutes, at the end of the first half. But then so basically they get outscored by 31 points. And then at the end of the game, they just very uncharacteristically, for whatever reason, there was an onside kick. They got a late score. There was an onside kick. FAMU almost returned it for a touchdown. And then FAM ran another play. For some reason, Coach Maynard decided he wasn't happy about something, had a very uncomfortable or a very unpleasant quick little conversation with Coach Simmons. Then there was all this hanging. I'd never seen a coach hang around on the field, and I didn't see any players brawling. There didn't seem to be any kind of things going on amongst players. Maybe some words were said from a staff or an assistant coach from FAMU. I don't know. But I'm watching Connell Maynard be on the field for literally like 10 minutes while the game is ended. FAMU is going over, the team is going over towards the band to sing the alma mater. Connell Maynard's still on the field. And then video comes out this morning of the locker room that A&M that pretty much left it trashed. It's just sort of this unwritten rule amongst equipment staffs that you kind of clean up your locker room at the end of the day. Well, Alabama A&M, no class, just really made a mess of the Florida A&M guest locker room. So they get an F for me for being trashy Bulldogs. Stay classy, Alabama A&M. Stay classy. So that's who gets my F. All right, moving over to the non-D1 level. Who gets your A, Kelvin? Who gets your A?
I will say this. I think that Virginia Union, I think to continue with the 3-point victory, and on the top of the polls, they get an A from me. Now, I couldn't give it to Langston only because I know the nature of Arkansas Baptist program, so they kind of walked off, just little early scrimmage, live contact drills with a group.
Spring practice.
Hey, but wait a second. Arkansas Baptist was look, I'm not going deep diving into their schedule, but they were 3-0 coming into that contest, though, Kelvin.
Well, I don't know where you saw that really? I had them at 1-2.
Oh, I don't know. Okay, so I'm just looking at Langston's. The Langston put their record after the game at 3-1. So maybe that's
of course
incorrect.
That might be part of the problem. It's hard to get information on Arkansas Baptist, but I think
Okay.
one of them might have been a prep school they played, but anyway.
Well, if you want,
I do.
Their schedule is interesting. They played Bethel, Texas College, RPA, Gordon Academy, Langston. They play
They
SWAGU
did beat
next.
Texas College. If I
Yes.
got that correct.
I thought you were giving me some IPAs there, Kelvin. I wasn't sure what you were saying there for a second. It sounded like you were naming off. I thought you were naming off some IPA. I was like, who? I was like, what kind of IPA is that? Okay. You were talking about Arkansas Baptist's schedule. Is that what you were just talking about?
Yes. Arkansas Baptist is an interesting school. I always applaud places that give kids a place to play. So they're a hybrid model school. They actually have a JUCO on their campus. So they have a nice model going there. So I'm not going to I just can't give anybody any credit for beating them. That's
I got you. And I did want to make mention that the top 5 teams of the mid-major division poll from the HBCU Pro Sports Media Association top 10 all won. That's Virginia Union, Albany State, Benedict College, Fort Valley State, Langston. That's the top 5 all won. Fayetteville was 6. Obviously, they lost. And then Virginia State right behind them, 7. They won. All right, Drew, who's your best from the weekend?
A+, Albany State Golden Rams. Shutout against Clark Atlanta. Unfortunately, we don't know what the final stats was of that game, but I did get a few moments to peep that game on ESPN. I believe that was on +3, whichever one of the ESPN platforms that was on. I watched it for about probably a third quarter on, and Albany State just dominated that particular ball game. So that was a get right game for Albany, and they needed that game as they have Miles this upcoming Saturday. So you need to make sure you got right against Miles as these two teams meet again. And I will tell you exactly how many times these teams have played over the last couple of years, because it's like, I want to say it's 5 times over the last 3 years. Pulling it up right now. Yeah, they went 2-0 and 21. Yes, 5 times over the last 3 seasons. They played twice in 18, splitting in 18. Of course, Miles won the most important game, which was the championship game. Played in 19. Miles won the championship game in 19. And Albany State won both the regular season matchup and the championship game in 21. So 5 times in the last 3 seasons, these two teams have met.
All right. My best grade goes to Virginia Union, #1 team. We talked about it going up against Fayetteville State. Preseason predicted to finish and win the South. Could be a preview to the CIAA championship game. We've already talked about the game already, so that's my best grade. Worst grade of the weekend goes to Kelvin. Who you got?
On the worst grade, does Arkansas Baptist fall into this category?
No.
I'll go with Fayetteville State on this, because Fayetteville State actually had an opportunity to win the game, and they were competing against the #1 team, and they could have came up really big with a win against Virginia Union, which fell a little short. So I'll give them my worst grade for not sealing the deal.
Okay, Drew, who you got?
It's kind of tough there, but I'm gonna have to kind of go with West Virginia State, kind of by default, because I can't give it to Bluefield State, because Bluefield State actually played a competitive game against Fort Valley. They had Fort Valley down multiple times in that particular game. But West Virginia State, just looking at their stats, they had 3 turnovers in that particular game, 2 interceptions, and a fumble, and lost to a conference foe, Notre Dame College.
Who was nationally ranked.
Who is nationally ranked at home 48-13. You're supposed to give a better game at home. So
Yeah,
West Virginia
that was going to be.
But I'm not giving them an F though. I will give them a D because that was
right. Yeah, I of the teams between Fayetteville State, West Virginia State, and Bluefield, those were the three of the top 10 that lost. Yeah, we're talking. I'm talking C minuses, the D pluses, and West Virginia State would be on the low end for me as well. You brought up all those points. They were outgained 471 to 384. Lost the turnover battle. So yeah, I'm right there. I'm right there with you. But that's a good program. I'm sure they'll rebound. So
tough conference.
Okay. Yeah, man, I tell you, that's a tough conference. Again, they play every game from beginning to end is all conference. So it's just round robin, best of the best. You play each other, and then you just, after you beat each other up, you see who's still standing. Okay, here we go. Before we get into the top five, I do want to make a quick mention, sort of a quick pivot from football for a second, because upcoming this week, guess what? Basketball media days are happening this week. And so before I forget it, I just thought I'd make mention for those of you who are basketball heads and you're interested. The CIAA will have their men and women's basketball media day on Monday. Then on Tuesday, the SWAC men will have their media day on Tuesday. And then Wednesday, the women of the SWAC will have their basketball media day. So I didn't find any dates for the MEAC or the SIAC. So I think those are the only two conferences having their media their media day this week. So I'm sure you can head over to those conferences' web pages and take a look at those conferences. Can you believe we're talking basketball already? It's time for basketball. I guess it is. 1 month into the school year, and hey, it's time to talk basketball.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's get into the BCSN top five. Okay, now again, this is our initial top five rankings for the year. Of course, last year, after all was said at the end of the season, the BCSN national champions last year were Bowie State in the non-Division I level and Jackson State out of the Division I level. And yeah, I know. A lot of people will say, well, how can you have Jackson State? They lost in the Celebration Bowl. Well, how can you give a championship to a 7-5 team? Anyway, needless to say, that the numbers are what they are, people, okay? So carry your debates to other places. That's why we let the numbers do the speaking, and all we do is run the list out there, and then, we can debate based on what the metrics say. Anything you want to add there, Drew?
No, and gonna be interesting as these come up. Let Kelvin give his comments on them, because you and I have seen these. Kelvin has not, so we'll be able to get an instant reaction from someone who has not seen the top five.
Okay, so we're going to start.
Okay.
I'm sorry, say that again, Kelvin?
No, you're going to reveal it, and then we're going to have the conversation, right?
Yeah.
We're going to reveal. Okay, we're going to start with the non-D1 level. Okay, so these are schools that are in the NCAA Division II level and or the NAIA. The outside looking in, just outside of the top five, is Langston University. Right now with a 4-0 record, 3-0 in conference right now. It should be noted that among our strength of schedule, amongst all the schools that make up this level. And how many schools would you say there are, Drew? It looks like there's almost about 30.
32. 32.
32. Unfortunately, Langston came out with the easiest strength of schedule. Okay.
Thus far.
Just thus far. And it changes. Obviously, strength of schedule will change based on team's performance. So just kind of take note of that. And you'll say, oh, well, how can an unbeaten team not be in your top 5? Well, okay. Just letting you know that. Number 5. Number 5 comes in out of the SIAC, and that is the Benedict College Tigers, unbeaten right now, 4-0, currently with a 2-0 record. Benedict comes in number 5. In terms of strength of schedule, should be noted that Benedict, one of the easier strength of schedules, coming in somewhere about maybe 6th easiest amongst all those schools. Okay. Just slightly ahead of Benedict is number 4, Fort Valley State Wildcats. They too are unbeaten, 4-0, with a conference record. Now they have an actual easier schedule. They have the second easiest schedule in the in this non-D1 level, according to our numbers. Okay, so again, number 4, Fort Valley State. Number 3. Kind of interesting seeing these guys here at number 3. From out of the CIAA, the Virginia State Trojans, 3-1 with a 2-0 conference record. The Trojans come in. I'm trying to look and see where their strength of schedule is. It's in the top 10 easiest in terms of strength of schedule. But Virginia State comes in at 3-1. And I have to make note here that in terms of points, there is only a 5-point difference between Virginia State, Fort Valley State, and Benedict. So, depending upon who the opponent is this upcoming weekend, these 3 teams could very much shuffle. That's how close they are in points to one another. Clear of number 2 is moving back over to the SIAC, and that's Albany Golden Rams come in at number 2, record of 3-1, 1-0 in conference play. Albany State in the upper half of toughest schedules in the non-Division I level. And that means the number 1 team, to no surprise, in our BCSN top 5, non-D1, Virginia Union Panthers, 4-0 on the season, 2-0 in conference play, and their strength of schedule actually is upper half of the 33 teams. All right, so Kelvin, again, just to recap, number 5, Benedict, 4 is Fort Valley State, 3 Virginia State, 2 Albany State, number 1 Virginia Union. What are your thoughts?
I like it. I also like it because most of these teams have really been doing well, like in their in-conference. Albany State's 2-1. Virginia State, obviously, they got, I know Virginia Union got the majority of the votes. I don't think there's any real surprises here until you roll into like a couple more games and get some more conference play under your belt. And also, too, the rivalry games will, again, have an impact on these as well.
And keep in mind, Kelvin, no one voted on these polls. This is actually a computer metric that we put together, and it spit out these numbers, and whatever the computer spits out, we roll with it. Now, last year, and in past years, people have been telling me we need to upgrade our processor on our computer sometimes because they don't understand the metrics, what goes into the metrics. I did go out and buy me a new Mac, but so maybe my processor speed is a little bit faster this year. I don't think anybody right now could complain about those. Some people will say Benedict and Fort Valley should be ahead of Virginia State, but it is what it is. But we're going to see some definite shuffling this weekend, as now we have a top matchup where Albany State, number 2 Albany takes on Miles, who is receiving votes. Benedict takes on Fort Valley, so that's a 4-5 game. So that becomes a top 5 matchup right there in the in our rankings. And Fort Valley receiving votes. Fort Valley number 4. So we're going to have some shuffling going on, like you said. Next week, Brian, some teams will solidify their place in the poll, in the ranking, or some people will drop very fast in the rankings.
All right. All right. Let's jump over to the any interesting before I jump over there. Any interesting comments or anything you see out of the chats, real quick? Anything that comes up?
What's monitoring the chat right now?
Okay.
Let's jump over there. We'll try to get all the comments in afterwards from both sides.
All right. Let's see. Okay, here's the Division I level. Now, of course, at this level, there are only 2 teams that are unbeaten at this level, given Hampton's recent loss to 9th-ranked Delaware. And speaking of Hampton, on the outside of the top 5, looking in, you've got schools like Hampton, as well as Alabama State, UAPB, and surprisingly to some people, Bethune-Cookman. Now, what's interesting about Bethune-Cookman sitting on the outside from the metrics, they have one of the top 5 toughest schedules, as well as UAPB. When you talk about top 5 toughest schedules, Bethune-Cookman, 5th toughest, UAPB, 4th toughest. So, Bethune-Cookman getting there. I think are they 1-2 now or 2-2?
They should be 2-2 now. They beat.
Obviously, they beat Grambling.
Correct.
Oh, really?
Okay.
And I'm trying to pull it up right now, Brian.
What'd you say, Calvin? Really? I love the way you said that.
They beat Alabama A. They beat Alabama A&M also. No, I'm sorry, that's wrong week. Not Alabama A&M. Bethune beat South Carolina State. No, they lost to South Carolina State. No, they're 1-2.
They only beat Grambling.
All right, just checking.
Yeah, they only
beat Grambling. Okay. Yeah. All right, just checking here. The numbers will play themselves out as the season goes, so everybody don't freak out. Okay, coming in at number 5, right out of the SWAC in Tallahassee, Florida A&M coming in at number 5 with 2-2. Mark 1-1 in conference. The Rattlers with the 7th toughest schedule amongst the D1 schools, obviously with their wins over Albany State and then just recently Alabama A&M, who I should say Alabama A&M with the toughest strength of schedule among all HBCU D1 teams. Coming in at number 4, also at 2-2, but over in the SWAC West, Alcorn State comes in at number 2. Alcorn with the 3rd toughest schedule in the HBCU Division I level. Alcorn comes in at number 4. Number 3, another 2-2 squad from the West, Prairie View A&M. Coming just slightly, I'm talking, it is a hair over Alcorn State in terms of points. Could be possibly related to conference wins, whereas, Alcorn has only played 1 conference game. I'm just speculating here. So just pay attention to how A&M, Prairie View A&M, and Alcorn possibly flip spots over maybe the next week or 2. Number 2 is North Carolina Central. Unanimous in a lot of people's polls. They are 4-0. Still haven't got into their conference schedule just yet. And then, of course, number one, undisputed Jackson State with a 2-0, 4-0 overall record, 2-0 conference record. So again, number 5 is Florida A&M. Number 4 is Alcorn State. Number 3, Prairie View A&M. 2, North Carolina Central. And number 1, Jackson State, right where they finished in the BCSN top 5 last season. Kelvin, what are your thoughts?
I'm in full agreement with this. I think the Prairie View piece will work itself out, especially with the way the poll is laid out. FAMU, I believe they'll probably fall out before it's over with, but we will see. And we're setting up for a real big showdown. If Alcorn stays true to course, you got a November 4th date with Prairie View, and you got an October 22nd date with Texas Southern. But the Jackson State Alcorn game could really just be a battle for who's going to Atlanta. And in this case, and here's something interesting to study about this. In this case, it could play out where Jackson State is forced into the FCS playoff because if they lose to Alcorn, because Alcorn would not get invited to the FCS playoff, in my opinion, as would Jackson State if they were the loser. Similar to FAMU last year going to the FCS playoff, and Jackson State going to the Celebration Bowl.
Let me run that scenario by me again. Is that possible?
Right. If you look at if Alcorn beats Jackson State, if everything kind of plays out the way it's kind of looking, regular season, Alcorn and wins their division, and then win the SWAC championship, Alcorn would be the team that would process to the Celebration Bowl. It would leave Jackson State, if they don't play in the SWAC championship game or win the SWAC championship, in a position to accept the bid for the FCS. It's same as FAM did last year. FAM went playoff. Jackson State went to Celebration Bowl against Buddy Pugh and South Carolina State.
But that would be Jackson State would have to lose to someone else.
They'd have to lose twice. They'd have to lose 2 games in conference.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, no, they'd have to lose. They would have to lose to us, and then literally we would have to probably beat them again. It might be a replay game on the SWAC.
But the playoffs would already have started by then.
The playoffs already started. That's the thing. Yeah. So
somebody would have to
that's what I. Well, there won't be any decision. They'd already be out. I mean, it's one of those things where they'd have to go into after they played that last game of the season.
I think I understand what he's saying. Would Jackson State, if given the opportunity to make a decision, hey, maybe we do better going to the playoffs? I don't think financially it's not a good benefit for Jackson State to go to the playoffs, because they'll make more money in the Celebration Bowl, win or lose, than they would in the playoffs, which is a lose-lose.
Yeah.
But it's interesting.
And then plus you're asking, and look, I heard this, I had to, I saw this discussion pop up on Twitter where all great conversations happen, I guess. And Jackson, let me be clear about this, folks. 4 games in, Jackson State lost their last game of the year. They were embarrassed, mocked, curb stomped in the Celebration Bowl. All this talk about dominating and dominance, they want to run the table and go back to the place where it ended and finish it with a bang. That means they want to go to the SWAC championship. They want to go to the Celebration Bowl. So before people start saying prefer, I don't think it'll happen. But that's sure they prefer that. But honestly, people got to wrap it around their mind. All this, maybe Jackson State would want to go to the FCS. Sure, maybe they want to, but they're focused on finishing the season and job. That means perfect season, unbeaten in the Celebration Bowl, win the celebration, get the bag, and then you can talk about all those crazy scenarios the next year. But I just hope that people catch themselves as they begin talking about what Jackson State's future for this year is going to look like. No, I'm telling you now, they want to finish where it ended so tragically and bad for them last year. That is in Atlanta, Georgia, walking off with a title, a Celebration Bowl title, and a perfect season. Period, point blank. And I'll argue. I'm not even a J State guy, but I will argue that if you try to tell me anything different, I will argue that point till the cows come home. I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying
it. Right, and I will say this. I think the truth of the matter is, based upon the way the parameters are set up, that is going to happen because if they run the table, they'll go to Celebration Bowl. They won't fight that. We just so happened last year to have a scenario where the FCS group believed, and they lost to Jackson State, I think 7-6 the first game of the season last year, where they believed that FAMU was worthy of playing in the FCS. What I do know is this: until schools such as Stephen F. Austin, which Alcorn played a strong game, Stephen F. Austin, your Chattanoogas, Missouri State, until when we see those schools begin to pop up on the JSU schedule, then will I believe they're actually contemplating playing in the FCS. Because, and this is weird, a little off subject, but this is strange. I was talking with a group about this weekend. Everybody wants to throw Jackson State out there against a Power 5 or whatever. The real litmus test is, can you play with North Dakota State, Missouri State, Stephen F. Austin,
Incarnate Word,
State,
yeah.
Incarnate, yes, and Villanova. Now, when you see those games pop up, and here's the strangest thing about it, Lindenwood University, which is located right here in St. Charles, Missouri, right outside of St. Louis, this is their first year playing Division I football, and they got votes to be in the top 25. So there's some measuring sticks out there for you got one team that's always played Division II NAIA that in their first year is getting votes. Jackson State is ranked at 17, I believe, in that. Well, they're ranked at 11 in that same poll, but you don't have a cross analysis of it because they don't play anybody like that currently.
Right. Good points. Good points. All right, folks, it's time to get out of here. Any final thoughts that you'd like to drop on us, Kelvin? Let people know also how they can find you on social media. What pseudonym are you hiding behind these days, and things of that nature?
I'm at one that's really simple. I'm at 06 Carter K on Twitter. So that's where I can be found. I covered East St. Louis football this weekend. And guys, I will tell you something, shameless plug, for any Southwestern Athletic Conference team or HBCU that does not recruit kids from East St. Louis, Missouri, you are missing out on a super special program. They don't hide their kids. They don't deter their kids. They send their kids from anywhere from University of Alabama to Vanderbilt to Jackson State to Alcorn. They're like FUBU. They're for us and by us. And they have, their head coach is an Under Armour coach, and they travel the country. They play IMG. They play St. John Bosco. I just believe that if our kids are going to be great, they need to be exposed to the places to where they can express themselves and also become a part of the greater HBCU family.
How far is UAPB from East St. Louis?
About the same distance as St. Louis because it's right by the arch. So Pine Bluff is, I believe, is about 4.5 hours from here.
I was going to say about.
So Maynard and Alabama A&M and UAPB will be playing here in the River City Classic. It'll be interesting to know that on that Saturday, East St. Louis will have a home game. So for every time that these schools claim that they don't have recruiting budget monies, I don't know what the rules or parameters are on pulling up, but on that Saturday before they play on that Sunday, they will get a chance to lay eyes on some of the best high school football players in the country at East St. Louis High School.
Ooh. I like you. And so when is that? When is that classic again? And that classic is happening, right? I mean, I know we were kind of wondering that.
Well, they're running
Drew?
They're running all the promos here in St. Louis. All the radio is coming
Okay.
through. So
Okay.
they've set up a lot of conference fairs. There's events going on downtown that have been planned. So I'm looking forward to seeing, anytime we get an HBCU in, and we're in the Dome on a Sunday, it should be a great day, and it should be a great day for HBCU football in the Gateway City.
Man, I like to see that. I think you guys might be the last of the of the Midwest Classics. We had the Classics in. Let me see. We had the Classics in Indy, Detroit, Chicago.
New York.
Yeah, I don't think that's
New York just happened. New York just
yeah,
happened.
New York. I was thinking about the Midwest. I was just thinking about the Midwest, where St. Louis, obviously, because all that came off of the success of the Circle City
Memphis is going away.
In my hometown. Yeah, and now it's look at you, Memphis is going away.
Yeah,
come on now,
you don't know that.
You're not. Don't say that. You don't know that to be true. Allegedly, you should always say allegedly, or I don't even think that's alleged, Drew. You can't say that. In my opinion, in Drew's opinion, ladies and gentlemen, that is not anything coming from the Black College Sports Network. Or where's our disclaimer? What's our disclaimer? Where's the button? Anyway,
but,
go ahead, Drew.
Why you own it? Will the Circle City? I know this is the first year they did not have the Circle City, and God knows when. Was this just like a 1-year hiatus, or is it potentially going away? Do you know? That's your hometown.
I don't know, but I don't think there is. They already made the obstacles of when they moved the date from October to September. That was already a signal that they wanted to. How do I say this? They wanted to change who was coming to town on a particular weekend. A, and B, because of the other group that was coming in town, they were spending more money than the group that had been there for the last 20, 25 years. You get my drift?
You totally lost me on that. You're going to have to explain that one to me off air.
I know exactly what he's saying. So
thank you.
They switch weekends to a different type of
they switch weekends because the first weekend in October always was the first weekend in October was always the weekend. I don't know the group that came in. I'll look it up, but it was a convention that wanted to come in, spend more money in the Circle City, and I mean the contract ran out with the Circle City and Indiana Black Expo, and obviously with the founder dying, he was the one who was really behind making that thing happen, Reverend Charles Williams. It just changed. And so all of that said, they moved it a week up and just wasn't the same. And schedules have changed. And now, obviously, with what people's feelings about classics are not the same as they were 20, 25 years ago, obviously, right? So that too is a factor. And I will tell you, I don't think my city, my hometown, love them to death, I don't think they want to pony up like the city of Birmingham and Montgomery and give away the kind of cash that these schools want or deserve. So I'll just put it at that.
Is that kind of like the story behind the Gateway Classic there, Kelvin? The founder of the Classic passed away a few years ago, and the Gateway Classic kind of fell off the wayside after that.
Well, the mechanics of the Gateway Classic were a little off as well, because the Gateway Foundation, which was led by Mr. Wilson, was dedicated towards giving scholarships. And there was a pervasive thought in the community that you don't have to attach an expensive football game away to give away scholarships to get kids to college. So if you think about it in theory, you were spending more money than you generated if you were to just take the donations from Southwest, Everett Jones, and those companies that would be able to donate in. You were spending more than you generated to do your work, and your work was to get kids to college. So in my opinion, it should have been coupled with the St. Louis Black Expo, and it would have been a great day. But the two were never hitched together like in Indianapolis to make it a all-inclusive weekend for the family in downtown St. Louis. That's just my take on it.
All right, Drew. Any final words or thoughts before we get out of here?
Hey, gonna have some exciting football this weekend. Columns will be coming out this week on d2football.com. Click on the SIAC tab and see my writing. Summary should be coming out tomorrow, with the preview coming out either Thursday or Friday to get you in tune for a big weekend on the east side of the SIAC this weekend. A lot of matchups. We're gonna see a lot of record shuffling this weekend in the SIAC.
Yeah. We didn't get into too many games for the upcoming week. I want to encourage you to go back and listen to Dr. Cavill's show from this morning, episode 309. Who knows? Maybe Drew and I will get together and drop a little nugget, something later this week. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, Drew. Just throwing it out there. Maybe we'll do a preview.
It always sounds good on Sunday. They come Thursday, we be like, man, I see your schedule didn't work out either.
Well, I'm just putting it out there now. Put it into the ether, in the universe, and you never know what might happen, right? It might happen. Right. Hey, I will leave us with the announcement today that Rihanna will be hosting will be performing at the Super Bowl. What is it? 50 something, 55, 56, something like that. Something. I don't even know what number they're on these days. But Rihanna will be hosting. Are you excited about Rihanna? Will it make you want to stay for the halftime show, Drew?
No.
Kelvin?
Yes.
Me too. I'll stick around. I'll stick around. So, hey, all right, folks. So that's going to do it for tonight.
Get out of here, Brian. One last question.
Quickly.
Shout out to you guys from the OG Strike Zone for keeping us up to date on the long FAMU athletic director search.
Oh, you just seen some news come across that happened? Has there been been an announcement?
No, but you guys been keeping us up to date on it. You saw how I got that news.
Yeah.
When I saw about it. Catch y'all guys on Wednesday. Maybe you'll have an update for us on Wednesday's OG Strike Zone.
Who knows? Maybe Wednesday. Things happen on Wednesdays with our show, so we might have some breaking news by Wednesday. Who knows?
End of the month is coming up. You expect to make a move by the end of the month.
I know. Will Davis asked, when will FAMU hire AD? When's the next full moon, Will? When's the next full moon? I don't know. When's that? All right, that's going to do it for tonight's show. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at MyBCSN1. Hey, go download the Jericho Broadcast Network's app on the Google or Apple Play Store. MyJBM, MyBCSN is how you can search and find it. And listen to all of our shows on the BCSN Pod Zone. That's BCSN Pod Zone. Everywhere that you listen and download and listen to podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Google, iHeartRadio. Go listen, download, and then give us a rating. Plenty of shows that you can listen to throughout the week and stay abreast of what's happening in the HBCU space. That's going to do it for our guest, Kelvin Carter, my partner, AD Drew. I'm Brian Fulford. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for your interaction and your chats. We'll talk again soon. Peace out.
Holla.
But my beats, they are hard.